Hey, good morning to everybody. Happy Tuesday. It's Daryl here. It's bright and freaking early, man. It's 3 a.m. here in Connecticut on the East Coast. Okay, I have a video all set to download. I told you guys about this yesterday in the Britney Spears video that I have this story about a situation, a bizarre story in Alabama. It has to do with karma. In my opinion, it has to do with karma, irony, and vigilantism, and I'm still going to download it, but I came across something else that I really feel the need to talk about this morning. I haven't practiced this video. I just have a few notes jotted down, so this is going to be kind of from my heart, kind of by the seat of my pants. So, if I hit a few blank spots, just deal with it. I came across a couple articles this morning, and one was in the New York Post, and it's right down below. Now, the New York Post, a lot of days I go through liberal-leaning stories. I go through conservative-leaning stories to see what the conservative people are talking about, what liberal people are talking about. And I try to make sense of everything. So this morning, I started going through the conservative stories, and on my app, it's called Flipboard. It's great for news stories. And it's got conservative, liberal, Donald Trump stories, for you, all sorts of stuff. And I found this article in the New York Post. It'll be right down below. And it talked about America is doing away with its own or something like that. And it's a very conservative, and a lot of times they exaggerate stuff in the New York Post. So I read it with a grain of salt. And it was talking about older white males. And it reminded me of the song, the video before last that I did. Oliver Anthony song, Rich Men North of Richmond, where at the end he talks about young men putting themselves 6 feet in the ground. And I kind of poo-pooed it when I did that review of that song. So I thought this was going to be more of the same, kind of like, self-pity, really, And so I read through it, and it was talking about how older white males, over 65, have the highest incidence of suicide. And it started talking about fossil fuels, and it's all because of people wanting to switch over from the white guys over 65 can't handle the way the world is changing and the way social Pop-Tarts are supposedly gay now. That's another story I was thinking of doing. Stephen Miller, the Trumper there, he's all upset because there are pink lemonade flavored Pop-Tarts. Seriously, and he thinks they're turning youngsters gay. So I took all this with a grain of salt, and I started looking at I decided I wanted to think about how I would talk about this, And at first, I got the urge to kind of tell them to get over it, to kind of make fun of it. And I realized that wasn't the right way to go about this, because there was times in my life where I was down, and I thought about this. And I want to talk a little bit more about that, because I looked at the statistics, and they only have statistics till 2021, and that was just an odd year with COVID. And I started thinking about, I looked at all the percentages, the latest percentages, and 50,000 Americans every year commit suicide, just under 50,000. And the majority of them, 69.68 are white males. And a good percentage of them are over 65. So, but this, the most up-to-date statistics they have is 2021. And they gave another statistic about how this is done, how it's accomplished, and firearms were 54.64%. And I started thinking of this, and I started thinking about my life. And there was a time when I seriously considered this. I was using at the time, but I want to talk about this and then I thought about the video I did, Diablo Immortal. It's this younger guy I saw. I subscribed to his channel. I'll have my link down below to the video I did. And Diablo Immortal said, "I'm not doing great." It's not a channel I usually watch, but I watched his video, and it bothered me. This person, this young guy was obviously just at the end of his rope, and he was crying in the video. And I felt for this dude, And so after I gave this some thought, after seeing the conservative New York Post article and the whole Oliver Anthony thing, I thought of a different way to approach this. And I want to talk about the time that, what I went through. and how I handled it. The first thing is, if you're feeling like, if you're getting these thoughts and you're not telling anybody, I know it's hard to do, but I urge you to talk to somebody. And the reason you do that is they're not going to give you an answer. But whenever I've done this, whenever I've it's hard to do, to say those words. I'm having trouble. I'm having a hard time. I'm thinking of doing this. But this is what I found. When you talk to somebody, and it doesn't really even matter, just somebody that'll listen. The key thing here is just hearing those words come out of your mouth. It is therapeutic. I think it enables your mind to put things more in priority, or it makes it more real. And when you keep things in your head, things get stretched out, things get exaggerated, and you think of options that are really out of bounds. But when you hear the words, when you actually talk to somebody, it's not that they're going to give you the answers, because people, a lot of times, they don't have the answers. But it's just hearing yourself. This is what I found. Saying those words, when you hear yourself actually say what you've been thinking, it makes you realize the magnitude, the immensity of what you're considering. And it really helped. It helped me, put things more in focus. What to do first, how to get myself out of this. It gave me a lot of hope when I actually heard, and it's something you don't want to do. You don't want to talk to other people. You don't want to tell people that you're having a hard time. You don't want to. That's the last thing you want to do, is admit this stuff. You figure if you don't talk about it, it'll go away. And it's kind of the opposite from what I found. Is if you don't talk about it, it gets worse, and it just bubbles up in your mind into exaggerated ideas and ways to deal with those things. It's much better once you hear. You just have to hear. You hear yourself saying those words, the things you've been thinking, and you realize, that that you really don't want to do that. That you've been looking pessimistically at everything. And when you hear yourself say the words. If you're thinking of doing this, the suicide hotline is 988. Please, I urge you to call this, before you do anything. Let me talk about this a little bit. There was a time when I did not want to wake up in the morning. I've been clean and sober since October 23rd, 2006, almost 17 years. And I was a hardcore drug addict, heroin and crack cocaine for 2.5 decades. And at the last 10, 15 years of that, every single day, I'd wake up into a nightmare. I did not want to go through it again. I did not want to have to go find money and go find drugs. I prayed every day that I would die in my sleep. And I also inherited firearms from my father. And this is one thing I noticed when I looked at these statistics. This is something I wanted to talk about. A lot of these people, the older white males, are gun owners. And this is what I found. Let me talk more. Since I've been clean and sober, a lot of terrible things in my life have happened. The summer of 2021, I was renting a house, a beautiful house, a great place to live. Me and my girl broke up, but we were still friends. All of a sudden, in the summer of 2021, my landlord came over and said, we're selling the house, we're moving to Florida, and you have to move out. And during that summer, there was nothing to rent. I had nowhere to go. There was no rents. It was the summer of COVID, and not only that, but I had to get out in 20 days, because they didn't want to tell me. They were putting off telling me, and in 20 days, the new owner was taking over where I lived, and I would, there was no ifs, ands, or buts. They waited too long because they didn't want to tell me. They didn't want to hurt me. They didn't know how to tell me, and they did me a big disservice by doing that. And I had 20 days to get out, and I had nowhere to go. Okay, so not only that, the girl that I was going to marry, my soulmate, that I had been my first girlfriend in 3rd grade, like I said, we had broken up, and she just decided to drive down to Florida. So I didn't have a place to live, so I was thinking, well, once she gets down there, maybe I'll move down there. And I was talking to her on the way down. When she got down there, she got to Jacksonville in July of 2021. I had nowhere to go. I was homeless for two months. She contracted COVID. This is when Delta variant blew up. And within a month or two, she died. she was gone. And not only that, I felt it was partly my fault, because if she hadn't gone to Florida, she wouldn't have got this. If we hadn't gotten the argument, I blame myself, but I still do to some extent. So I lost my soulmate, the most important person in my life, my first girlfriend. And not only that, but I blamed myself for it. I had nowhere to go. I was going to be homeless for the first time in my life, with nowhere to go. And not once, I promise you, not once, didn't even cross my mind the thought of giving up, the thought of suicide never entered my mind. And I think I'm going to give you guys a few reasons for this. Like, once I got through drug addiction, I realized how short your time here is. It really is. No matter what, even if you're just 20 years old, or you're 30, or 50, or you're 18, I've lived 57 years on this earth, and the time just goes by faster and faster. This life is going to be over way before you even know it. Every year just goes by faster and faster and faster. I thought once I got clean and sober, the years would go by slower because I was more aware. I wasn't in a fog all the time, but it's not true. It's just they go by faster and faster. And I realize at 57, how many more years, do I have on this earth? 10? If I'm lucky, 5, 2, 5, 10, 20, maybe at the most. In 20 years, I'll be almost 80 years old. This life is going to be gone and over. The last 17 years of me being clean and sober has gone by like that. So the next 20 years will go by like that if I'm even that lucky. So, there's no need to rush anything. It's quite the opposite. You have to, no matter how bad things get, enjoy every moment here, because it's only going to last for a very short time. No matter how bad you think it is, it's going to be over quick. And you don't need to rush it at all. I think a lot of people that are in car accidents or cancer or drug addiction, really, I had planned on not making it, not living. I was totally sure that I'd be dead by the end of the year. I wouldn't see Christmas. And now it's like a second chance. And I realized, no matter how bad your day is or your year is, or if you're divorced or broke or whatever, this is it. Every day with the sun coming up. I know it sounds corny, but it's a gift. It's going to be gone before you even know it. So there's no point in rushing it. This is another thing that came to my mind. Back when I was using, I had inherited a whole gun collection from my father, and I had shotguns, long guns, pistols, a 41 Magnum, 41, not a 44, a 357, a 22 Ruger, Antonio Zoli shotgun, and those guns are always sitting in my closet. And I'll tell you this, it's a bad thing, because most of these people own guns. That's one of the statistics I noticed. I know a lot of conservatives love having their guns, but I noticed, the years when I did have weapons in my house, it was the first thing that came to my mind. Whenever I had a bad day, whenever I got depressed, I thought of those guns. I thought, well, there's a way out. And it's too easy. I know it sounds crazy, it sounds scary, but I lived the years with those weapons in my house, and I've lived the last 17 years. I still have these, but they're not in here. They're not available to me. They're locked away. And it doesn't even cross my mind anymore. Granted, I'm also in a much better state of mind because I'm not using. These are two things that I noticed. Sometimes, doctors prescribe these opioids, and they numb you to the world, and they numb you to everything, to your own life. And having these weapons, these firearms in my house back when I was using, it became way too easy to think about, well, if things get bad, I'll just use them, and now, like I said, that year, the year 2021, I lost my home. I was homeless. Luckily, my sister took me in, and then I found this place, and things turn around. They do. A lot of times, almost every time in my life, the worst things that happened to me turned out some of the best results. When things looked the bleakest, it forced me to go in another direction and find something else, and that turned out to be a blessing. Every single time. I'm so happy here. the rent, the people here, and this is what I found. I'm happier here than I was in the other place. Things have turned out for the better. I still miss my ex-girlfriend every day, and I still kind of blame myself for her loss, but I know that the last thing she'd ever want me to do is end my life. I truly believe too that ending your life is the worst thing you can do. And if I ever have a chance of seeing her again when I pass, the only way I could mess that up is if I take my own life. That's the only way I think that I'll never be able to see her again. So that's off the table. That is completely off the table. That summer of 2021 was one of the worst summers of my life, the worst. And it's just made me more resilient, more positive, more driven to succeed, to see more years on this earth, to enjoy another day. Because seeing this, I know it sounds corny, but the sun coming up every day, the smell of the air, there's, no matter how bad things are, there's always that. And it's a good thing, and it's only going to be here. You're only going to be able to enjoy that for a limited time. I hope this made some sense. I'm still going to download the Alabama video, this bizarre story of vigilantism, 3 people losing their lives, and 2 from beatings, 2 from a car accident, 2 from beatings and 1 from a car accident. And it's just bizarre. It's filled with irony and karma, and it's a crazy story. That's the video that I promise you, that video will be up next. I'm going to call it Try That in This Small Alabama Town: Karma, Irony, and Vigilantism. I think that'll be the title of the video. That'll be up this afternoon. Have a good Tuesday.